Hello, and welcome to the very first edition of the Texas Bomb Squad Massacre.
That's fucking terrible.
We're going to start covering the first four episodes, the first four movies of Texas Chainsaw Massacre in May, and then we'll catch back up in October and finish the series. We were going to do the whole series, and then we realized there's like eight of them. Maybe nine by the time we're done because there's another one that's already finished and it's going to get released soon. We had to start with the first one, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Joshua, tell us what this movie is about.
It's a group of teens who have to make an unexpected stop at a small Texas town and get more than they bargained for.
Ooh, very mysterious. Very Texas Chainsaw mysterious. Yeah, but
Um,
it's because their
this movie also.
grandpa's cemetery was desecrated. And so they went to go find
Oh, you're right.
um
Wow. How did
they
I
they
forget a
they went
plot
to
point
go
from a
see if
movie I
they're
just saw?
the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 1974 horror film. It was directed by the great late Toby Hooper. I was gonna call him Stanley. Stars Marilyn Burns and Gunnar Hansen. Those are the most famous. It was shot on location in around Austin, Texas, and it was shot during the summer, which we'll talk about soon.
Because it
But
sounds
yeah,
miserable filming it. Yeah.
also it is kind of funny because sometimes people bring up that this movie is like a political movie about the Vietnam War, and like Josh was saying, like the main, I feel like if you haven't seen this movie, the main thing you probably know about this movie is based on true events, and it's very much framed like that. At the very beginning, there's like John Larroquette came in to do a voiceover. It has a very documentary feel to it, but it's not based on true events. It's like loosely based on Ed Gein, who's in Wisconsin.
Which every
Um,
serial killer movie for a long time was. I will
yeah,
say it is a movie that I.
you ain't cool unless you base some of your movie on Ed Gein.
So it was one of those situations where this movie is way smarter and understated than I remembered it being. Like I think I was
Yeah,
conflating it with what came after, and I was like, "Oh, it really isn't like it's more implied violence than what you see for the most part." And I mean, that's what makes it scarier.
yeah. The funny thing is, and it's hard to even if you think about the kills in this movie, you wouldn't realize that. But Toby Hooper actually wanted this movie to be rated PG, which at the time, like in 1974, there was no PG-13, so PG was kind of PG-13.
Oh
So he
yeah.
wanted it to be like PG-13, and so he didn't show any real blood. Like you only see blood and guts once, and that's when Leatherface hurts himself. But when he
Well,
turned it in, he got a X rating,
you
which
do
I think
see
is
the
real funny.
desiccated corpse. Like it opens on a shot of like the
Yeah,
posed corpse in the
but you don't.
graveyard.
But even the corpse is um, it's not like bleeding. It's like meat tenderizing, but it's not like bleeding
Yeah, it's
profusely.
still. I mean, it's again the implication of what that is, though, is
And if
gross.
if you know anything about the MPAA, they really just care about blood. And
Yeah,
so I think other than being like one of the scariest movies of all time, it's also like a feat in independent cinema that I think. I mean, I think that's why most people. I mean, even if you don't like it, you can at least appreciate that these guys wanted to make this movie, so they went out and did it. Like one of the things is that John Larroquette, who's famously does the opening narration, and like John Larroquette went on to be his own actor and stuff. But his payment for doing the opening narration was a joint.
God, what a '70s move.
That's like
Yeah,
the most 70s thing ever, yeah. And then they filmed it in the summer. They didn't have any it wasn't a set, it was just a house, and there's like a bone couch in the middle of their house. It doesn't look comfortable at all.
very
But
funny
they
because you've also filmed a movie in the dead of summer, like with no money, and it's like, and it was miserable, and we had air conditioning, and they didn't even have that, in this like old
Yeah.
house they were filming it. It must have just been like absolutely like insufferable.
And if you haven't been to Texas in the summer, especially like not even El Paso, but in Austin. Oh my god, the
Oh
humidity
yeah,
is
the humidity.
insane.
Yeah.
And so like yeah, it had to be terrible. But yeah, they have like a dead couch and it's full of skulls. And they just got real human bones because they couldn't afford fake human bones. And they use like real blood at times. Like it's just like everything that you read about is just like, oh yeah, this was the worst thing ever.
It's that's why this movie, these movies, even when they're well done, it's like this is unpleasant to watch, but I respect how bad it makes me feel. You know what I mean? And these teens are super like new age, like into like the zodiac and like horoscopes, kind of like in a way that never helps. That like it's like they're like kind of like helpless. You know what I mean? Like they're basically
Yeah, I
kind
do
of
feel like
kids
there
who are just
is like these
going to be
teens.
murdered. The gas station where they stop and they won't have gas available till tomorrow. The gas station attendant is part of Leatherface's family. He's the cook. He's like, hey, don't go to that house.
Well, now look, you boys don't want to go mess around no old house. But those things is dangerous. You're liable to get hurt. We'll be careful.
Like he was like, hey, if the rest of my family doesn't find you, you'll be okay. But once they found you, like we have to kill all of you. You know what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense to you, or was it like, oh no, he
Yeah, I
was
do,
gonna get them anyway? And I was like, I don't know, because he seems like he really was trying to warn them, like, hey, just don't go out into the
I do
woods.
think that there is like one of the things I like about this movie we can talk about more is that they all have very different reactions to murder. The family, the Sawyer family, and the yeah, I do think actually he is trying to save them a little bit in terms of like, oh, if they don't go there, we don't have to kill them. And so I do think it's genuine because that guy, his name is Old Man. None of them have real names, but they all kind of like he is trying to save him because he does talk about how he hates murder and he just can't get into it like the other two.
Yeah, like he says, I take no pleasure in killing, which is funny because it's like that is kind of like they like live in an old slaughterhouse, and it's like I think that's how most of society like looks at slaughterhouses, like, oh, we don't like it, but we see it as a necessity, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's literally what he says. But so yeah, I do think that kind of adds like, and I want to bring that fact up because like the kids in this movie, other than Franklin, don't really have a lot of characteristics. Like if you had to describe any of the other kids other than Franklin and like Sally, who's the main character, even though she is the main character and she's the one who survives, spoiler alert, she also doesn't have a lot of characteristics. Like you relate to her because of what's happening to her as opposed to who she is as a character.
Yeah, like you want to see
But
her survive. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But the killers from Leatherface to the cook to the
the hitchhiker.
grandpa to the
Yeah.
hitchhiker, they have so much characteristics where you know like their motivations, you know like what pleasures they get out of murder. Like the hitcher clearly gets like some kind of sick pleasure out of torturing the people while they're still alive. And Leatherface obviously like likes it when they're already dead. Like he likes to play with the bodies clearly and like he
Yeah,
has different
it's funny
leather
because
faces.
he almost all for the most part just kills everyone immediately.
Yeah.
Like the idea is like, yeah, he just like wants to make their bones into like a lamp or whatever. Yeah, no, it was something I didn't remember about it. I just saw him as like this omnipresent. I'm like, oh no, they're all kind of doing their own thing, you know?
Yeah, and then the cook, he doesn't like to murder at all. He just likes to eat their food.
I understand you ain't nothing. Me and him do all the work. I just can't take no pleasure in killing.
And so like yeah, it's funny how much characterization all of the bad guys have as opposed to all of the good guys and that direct conflict. And I mean it does have to do with the fact that like if you run into Leatherface in this movie, you're not getting away. Like there's no other
Yeah.
than Sally, there's no like second chances. And I think that like the very first murder is the guy walking. He sees Leatherface and Leatherface hits him on the head and then hits him again and then closes the door and that's it.
Yeah, or when he puts the girl on the meat hook, there's no like like it just he just does it, and there's no like scrunch sound effect or anything that you would
Yeah.
expect, or like hard music sting, which there definitely was in like the 2003 version. And it's like, oh yeah, no, it's more horrifying that he just did it and it just would have happened and just be the most painful thing, you know?
Yeah, and I think in both instances he'll just like until he kills Franklin, he'll kill you, and then he kind of just goes about doing his stuff. Like that's what to me, that's what makes that scene with the meat hook so scary is that he puts the girl on the meat hook and then just turns away and like gets back to like doing whatever he's doing. I think he's like cleaning his chainsaw.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like it's like, oh yeah, he knows you're not getting away. Like he's not scared that you're gonna run or you're gonna get the meat hook out of you. He already knows how this is gonna end, you know?
Yeah, although I do kind of appreciate that and this is probably just because they had no budget, but like the chainsaw is realistically kind of shitty. Like obviously he's good with it, but it doesn't just slice through stuff like it's like a lightsaber. It's like, oh, it kind of bounces off stuff because chainsaws really aren't meant to like,
You're right, right, right.
be
Yeah, I always wonder why this movie's so shocking. And I especially like that first kill, I think because you know that something's coming and it spends so much time like building up to that first kill and then it just happens like the guy is literally like looking they're looking to find
Yeah,
someone
he just
because
comes out and there's no like, oh, you see him stalking him like through the house. It's like no, he just show like he's just there, and I think that's kind of where you're
and
like,
it's all
okay.
yeah, you almost get the sense that Leatherface isn't expecting anyone and he's like, oh shit, okay, and then he just does it like, oh, this is what a lucky day for, and it's so funny because it takes so long for the murders to start happening. And once they start happening, the movie is unrelenting until the very last frame.
Like this is one of those where it's like, oh no, it holds up because it like defined the genre in so many ways.
So for the last thing, and I think we're gonna do this for all of the movies, I want to talk about who do you think personally is the scariest member of the family in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original.
Me personally, I think it's the Hitchhiker.
You know, I'm gonna say the same thing. How weird! Like that
Because
first,
like Leatherface is kind of confined to the house,
right?
and obviously the grandpa's just an invalid, and the cook
Right.
seems like he wouldn't kill you if he didn't have to, whereas the hitchhiker is
Yeah,
actively seeking, like at the beginning when they pick him up, he's trying to get them. He's like, oh, come to my house, my brother's a good cook. Like he's essentially luring. He's also unsettling to be around, like
yeah. It's also that thing where like the hitcher is yeah, like all he has to do is sit in the van and get them to go to the house so that they can murder them, which is like a 5-minute drive. And
but he's
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 so
so
unhinged.
unhinged, yeah.
Yeah, he can't keep it together for that 5 minutes before creeping everyone out. And like his response to
Yeah, he
them,
can't not
like, you know,
cut
like when the
himself. Yeah.
yeah, like when they like when you're talking to someone and you notice that you're making them uncomfortable or whatever, you would be like, "Oh, I'm sorry," like, or you like try to change your attitude. But every time his response is to make things worse. Like
Yeah.
he gives them a picture that he takes at Franklin. He wants $2 for it, and they're like, "We're not going to give you $2." And they're like, "All right, it's about time for you to go." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And so he takes out like a piece of aluminum foil, and he like sets the picture on fire with gunpowder. And like that freaks him out even more. So then his response to them freaking out to that is to take out his knife and cut Franklin down the arm.
Yeah.
It's just so like he's just so crazy that like yeah, the whole time I was like, what is wrong with you, dude? But the Hitcher, he seems to enjoy like making you uncomfortable, like and getting like the reactions out of you. So like if I mean, obviously you don't want to be killed by any of them, but if you have to be killed by any of them, Leatherface is gonna hit you over the head and then the lights out. But the Hitcher, he wants you to be as scared as possible before he kills you, and
Yeah.
it just makes him so much worse. Like every time he's on screen, you're like, oh my god, what is wrong with this guy? That's why I seen him like in an interview where he's just acting normal. You're like, oh yeah, acting. That's a thing. I'm a
See,
director.
and what I think works is that he's the only one like that, and that's always been my problem with a lot of these like Rob Zombie style
Yeah.
remakes is that everyone acts like that all the time. Where it's like, well, it doesn't really work when everyone's this crazy.
Yeah, I think that that is an important note to take is that I think the reason this works is because yeah, like I mean, I don't want to shit on Rob Zombie. We have talked about how we like Lord of Salem, but one of the problems with like House of a Thousand Corpses is that they're all kind of the same level of crazy, especially in the Devil's Rejects, and it's literally the main problem with the Three from Hell or whatever it's called, is that they're all the same kind of crazy. Where in this one, the fact that they're very much their own characters kind of makes it way worse, you know?
Yeah, that there's these kind of like distinct personalities, whereas they're all kind of manic, angry, yelly, tortury guys in the Rob Zombie movies. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that makes it like it kind of does the same thing. Where it's like, oh, I'm watching a movie because they're all. There's no way that this family could hold it together for that long. Where the Sawyers, with the fact that the chef is like just a normal guy and the Hitcher can at least talk to people, I can understand how they've been able to like last out here in the middle of nowhere for so long. But like, yeah, in some of these other movies, like this Texas Chainsaw Copycats, the problem is that they all act super crazy, and I think, or even we may even run into this problem with some of the
I
sequels.
was going to say, I assume I honestly assume it only gets worse. This is probably the height based on
Well, I mean, it is going to be the height just because this is one of the greatest horror films of
the
all time.
seminal film. Sure, but I am
How do you
interested
feel
to
about
see
it?
it's like, how do they try to change the formula, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. I think like there's a lot to mine out of this, and we're going to see how that goes as we continue. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see the next one. I have interesting stories about me watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 when I was a little kid. But yeah, so that one's coming up next week. It stars Dennis Hopper. They brought Toby Hooper back because this movie was a phenomenon. Like it did really well. And I mean we're still talking about it today, obviously. I think if anyone, I think Texas Chainsaw is on everyone's greatest horror movies list, you know? Although I can understand why people would hate it because it is like unrelenting. Like I don't think my mom. Oh, that I just remembered that. My mom and dad they went to go see Texas Chainsaw Massacre on their first date
what a
ever.
terrible first date film.
I know, like imagine if you go see a movie and it's Texas Chainsaw. I would never see that man again. I would be terrified of him. But yeah, that is funny. And so yeah, I just think like, and my mom hates horror films, which makes it even funnier because this is like not even a normal horror film. It's like a fucking, it goes out of its way to be nasty. um
Yeah, which is again, it's very. I don't feel good watching them, but I appreciate that that's the intent. You know.
yeah, that I mean it's the intent and it works, and I think it works because not only does it is it unrelenting, but also at least there is some semblance of Sally getting away, I think if they all died, and I've seen a movie where this actually becomes a problem, where if they all died, there's nothing to really even root for, and you're just like, oh, this sucks. I don't want to just see torture porn. Um, so yeah, so next week we're moving on to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So I just want to say that our short film, and by short I mean feature, I don't know how to talk. I just want to say that our feature film, which won Best of the Fest at the Sacramento Horror Film Festival, take that, Myanmar. What's that movie called? Take that.
Minari.
Take that, Minari. Oh, you won Best Picture? Guess who won Best of the Fest
I was gonna.
at the Sacramento Horror Film Festival? This guy. And I didn't even need to be bought by Amazon, Nomadland. Um, those are the only movies I know that are nominated. I wish I could know more. But we have also gotten into the International Horror Film Festival in Columbus, Ohio. We will be playing on June 3rd through the 6th. So if you're in Columbus, Ohio, or anywhere near it and you want to see what the hell I'm always talking about, come on down. I might even show up if I can arrange it. So yeah, very exciting. Me and Josh worked on it, and we're super pumped to show it again. We're still in
Quite the film.
festivals. Yeah, we're still in festivals. But it's cool. It's cool to be able to see it on the big screen eventually. So yeah, so check that out, and also come back for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It can only get better. I mean, so many options. But yeah, This has been the Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Andrew Joseph Hara. Andrew Minyar, Nomadland Horror.
And I'm the Joker. I'm keeping that from the
From the
Justice League
Justice League.
episode. Yeah,
From
I'm
our most
st-
famous episode, the Justice
I'm
League.
still the Joker, in case for anyone keeping track.
But yeah, so we'll see you guys next week. Have fun. Have a good week, guys.
Have a sextastic week. I don't know.
Have
Just
a
cut that part out.
spectacular week. We are ruining our own podcast as we do. Yeah. All right. All right, guys. See you later.